So I don't know if people have seen the neoliberal free market Milton Friedman-esque publication, The Economist. 10 years after Lehman, has finance been fixed? Right? They're talking about this is the 10-year anniversary of the financial crisis that really defines the millennial generation, right? I was a college student. I was in my first or second year of college, and the economy crashed, and millennials, all of a sudden, the economy was in a wreck. What was going on? Obama sweeps into office in a landslide. The economy was crashing and burning. Now that's 10 years ago. What happened in the crisis, right? Well, the right wing says, oh, well, it was just because too much regulation and we don't have real capitalism. Liberals say, oh, it's because, we got too right wing and deregulated too much. What happened in the financial crisis? I'm going to tell you what happened 10 years ago because it's not over. The problems underlying the 2008 financial crisis are still there. And I'm going to tell you what they are after I take another drink of the diet beverage, the soda, the beverage that will not be named. For decades and decades, there has been an effort to push the United States in a more free market neoliberal direction. Cut public spending, cut taxes on wealthy people, stop providing social programs to people. It's just been a huge trend in U.S. politics. And as a result, the standard of living for the average American has been decreasing, right? People in the USA don't have the spending power that they once had. They don't have the ability to purchase. Increasingly, people in the USA just don't have the spending power they once had. They don't have a good-paying industrial job. They don't. The government jobs. A lot of these government jobs have been slashed. One of their programs I know that they had here in New York for a long time was where in order to get your welfare benefits, you had to do the job of a government worker for free. Right? That's a program that they have, right? Where volunteerism. Let's not pay people to clean the streets and pay them a decent wage. Let's tell everyone they're being patriotic and volunteering to do it. And then, of course, government jobs are eliminated, right? And that good paying jobs and the kind of American middle class, that class of people in the United States that are working class, but they can afford a house and a car and they have a decent income, that's been in decline. And it's been in decline. Every effort has been made to cut back the labor unions that created it, to cut back government spending that created it, to just get the government out of the economy, right? Alan Greenspan was the leader of the Federal Reserve. Right after Nixon was ousted, when Gerald Ford was elected president, one of the first things he did was appoint Alan Greenspan. And Alan Greenspan brought Ayn Rand, his mentor, the author of The Virtue of Selfishness, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, Atlas Shrugged. He brought her to the White House when he got sworn in at his first government job. So Alan Greenspan, who eventually becomes a leader of the Council on Foreign Relations, also the head of the Federal Reserve, he's in there. And, as things go along, as the standard of living of the USA keeps dropping, as the wages are decreasing, they start to have a problem. Right? They start to have a problem. What's the problem? Well, the problem is that Americans just can't buy the products, right? That Americans just don't have the spending power. And we're churning out all kinds of products all over the economy right now, right? I mean, they in the 1990s, the computer revolution, right? I mean, they're churning out all kinds of new computers. There's the dot-com boom where all these internet companies are starting up, and then you have the bust, and they all fall apart at the beginning of the Bush administration. All kinds of jobs are being replaced by machines. All kinds of jobs are being shipped to other countries. I mean, the economy, they just don't need the workers anymore, but they're producing things more efficiently than ever, right? I mean, we're at the point where, they have print-on-demand services. You push a button and a book comes out, right? No book binderies with thousands and thousands of workers, right? You're at the point where short order cooks. What's a short order cook? It doesn't exist anymore. It's been eliminated. They've replaced short order cooks. They've got these fast food assembly lines where people get paid minimum wage to make a hamburger almost like it's a car on an assembly line. Boom, 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 and a hamburger comes out. Right? All kinds of, situations where you would need skilled workers, high-paid workers are being eliminated. Workers don't have the standard of living, but the economy is full of all these products that are being produced more efficiently than ever, and people aren't buying them. So Alan Greenspan comes along and he says, we've got to keep people spending. Look, and especially in the early years of the Bush administration, around the time of 9/11, there was this feeling like, oh my goodness, right? We've got to keep people spending. So Alan Greenspan says, okay, why don't we make the lending of money a lot easier than it used to be? And particularly with housing, right? Americans couldn't afford to buy homes at the same rate they used to, right? That 1950s white picket fence American dream thing, people just can't afford to buy homes like they used to, right? And housing is a big section of the U.S. economy. All the people involved in building the houses, all the people involved in selling the houses, all the banks involved in lending the money to make the buying of the houses happen, right? It's a problem. Americans just don't have the standard of living necessary to keep buying homes the way they once did. And it's a problem. The housing numbers are down, so Alan Greenspan says, okay, why don't we legalize methods of lending people mortgages, lending people money to pay their mortgage, to pay for the home? Why don't we legalize ways of doing that previously had been completely illegal, right? So, like, you know, we'll give them a loan where, like, for the first year they only pay a certain amount, and then after 2-3 years, all of a sudden it triples, right? Or let's lend people the money to buy a house, I mean, all kinds of things that in common media they referred to as predatory lending became legal, right? And all kinds of people were getting credit card loans that they couldn't afford to pay back, but the idea was, hey, we're just going to keep people spending. Alan Greenspan was sitting there in the Federal Reserve and telling Congress to help him deregulate because they needed to keep people spending money. Because at the point, the standard of living of the U.S. working class had drastically decreased, and they desperately needed people to keep spending money. Keep spending money, keep spending money, keep buying houses. What? Your income is not at the level that people once had. Well, just here's this mortgage loan we'll give you, you can spend it, right? It was happening over and over all throughout the U.S. economy. Alan Greenspan is deregulating lending and enabling people to keep spending when they couldn't afford it, in the hopes that they can keep selling all these products, right? So a U.S. public whose spending power has been drastically decreased, who just doesn't have the ability to buy back all these products, with their incomes lower, all of a sudden, they're getting the ability to keep buying. But eventually, it doesn't last forever. And pretty soon, when people have these loans they can't pay back with the inflatable mortgage payments, where they're pretty soon, all of a sudden, the homes start getting foreclosed. And pretty soon, they can't afford to keep giving people this credit. And suddenly, you have a crash in the U.S. economy. The root of the issue was not the deregulation. The deregulation was done to keep people spending. The root of the issue is not government regulation, right? It's not, people try to blame the Community Investment Act that, they were making banks lend. No, that's not the issue, right? The Community Investment Act and the ban on redlining and not loaning to people in certain neighborhoods, that wasn't the issue. The issue was that the standard of living of people in the United States has decreased in our global, high-tech, low-pay economy. It has decreased. People just couldn't buy back the products that were being so efficiently produced without them with computers. And Alan Greenspan was trying to keep people spending, but they couldn't afford it. That was the problem. It's called overproduction. Under capitalism, the capitalist is constantly driving to make people produce as efficiently as possible. He wants to hire as few people and pay them as little as they possibly can pay, as little as he can get away with, and drive them to produce, right? Just like Jeff Bezos with his network of Amazon sweatshops, where he's driving these people, paying them as little as he can, driving them to produce, trying to eliminate workers and replace them with machines, trying to make the workers he has as de-skilled and replaceable as possible, right? You just need somebody to just push a button, no skill, no college education required. You do that, right, and you drive people to produce. You pay them as little as possible, and at the end of the day, all that cheap stuff that they're producing, all those iPhones and iPads and books and movies and all those products that are being so efficiently produced with so few workers and with workers that are being paid so little to produce them, at the end of the day, those people can't spend, and they can't buy back those products that they are so efficiently producing. And there's a problem because you have a market that's glutted with products that cannot be sold. Overproduction. That's what Karl Marx's book Capital is all about. It's about the problem of overproduction, how the capitalists are trying to make money for themselves and they're operating in an irrational way, and that the supply side and the demand side at the end of the day don't match up. That's the problem of overproduction. That's what Karl Marx wrote about. I'm going to see if I can pull out. I've got Capital around here somewhere. But that's what Marx was writing about. That was Marx's thesis. That's the problem with capitalism, is that at the end of the day, when you have an economy that is organized in order to serve profits, and it's not rationally planned, and every business owner and every private capitalist is doing everything they can to maximize their profits, and you don't have a central plan and a central vision, the result is utter chaos. And the capitalists try to organize it. They work hard to try and make it work, right? They developed the Federal Reserve Bank, right? There used to be these panics that they had. So they set up the Federal Reserve, a private corporation that pumps money in and out of the economy to keep companies from crashing, right? They set up, all kinds of mechanisms to try and stabilize what is naturally an unstable system. When the major centers of economic power are organized for the purpose of making profits for those who own them, you're going to have complete and utter chaos, and you're eventually going to have a crisis, and you're going to have recurring crises of overproduction. That's what Karl Marx wrote about. Marx, there were all kinds of people before Marx who were opposed to capitalism morally. And they said, look, why should some people be homeless and some people be millionaires and billionaires, right? They said, why should people be worked so hard while their employer, exploits their labor? That Marx didn't invent that. That was around. You had Saint-Simon in France who said that. You had Robert Owen in England and the United States who said that. Socialistic kind of critiques of capitalism. Even at the time capitalism was emerging, you had the Roman Catholic Church saying, look, well, this is immoral because people are going to put money ahead of, Christian values and following the laws of the church. Critiquing capitalism in a moralistic way was around long before Karl Marx. That's not what Karl Marx developed. What Karl Marx developed was a scientific critique of capitalism, pointing out why it is not sustainable and why ultimately the banks, factories, and major industries, the centers of economic power, need to be owned and controlled by society as a whole and operated in a rational way, not operated according to profits, that you need human reason and intelligence to control the economy, that profits and the chaos of the market, the anarchy of production cannot be allowed to run rampant. That's what Marx was saying, and that you need to control the means of production. Society must control the centers of economic power. That's what Karl Marx wrote about in Capital, in the Communist Manifesto, in all of his writings, the manuscripts of 1848, Wage Labor and Capital. At the end of the day, that's what Marxism is about. It's the need to control the means of production, society controlling the economy rationally so that growth is unlimited, and you can ensure unlimited growth. And the vision of communism, which Karl Marx wrote very little about, he wrote very, very little about communism, but his ultimate vision of communism, right, of a completely stateless, classless world where people could just take what they wanted and do what they felt like doing, each according to their own ability, each according to their need, that was based on a huge level of material abundance. If it got to the point that production was so efficient that there was like a 1-minute work week or something like that, people could just do what they wanted, right? That was the vision, and that was only possible. You could only get to that level of technological progress and that level of material abundance. You could only get to that point by having a planned rational economy. That capitalism, with its crises of overproduction, with its irrationality, with its driving down of wages and the loss of spending power, with the falling rate of profit, right? Catchphrase, falling rate of profit, that the capitalist economy organized to make money for billionaires could not reach that point. That in order to get unlimited growth and abolish poverty, you had to have a planned economy, and society must control the means of production, the centers of economic power, right? That's what happened in the financial crisis of 2008. That's why everyone said Marx was right, because Marx's prediction, his understanding of how the capitalist economy works, what he explained to the world in Capital, it proved itself to be true. And before every big crisis of capitalism, the capitalists announced to the world that they've beaten it, right? We saw in the 1990s, they said, look, we're never going to have a problem, right? Unlimited growth, it's going to happen. In the 1920s, right? Ford has defeated Marx, was what they said. And generally, what precedes the reason for this is because in the lead up to a period of extreme capitalist growth, you tend to have the development of stabilization mechanisms that the capitalists believe will prevent the crisis, right? In 19-teens, around the time of the lead up to World War I, you had the development of the Federal Reserve System. And so they said, oh, we've beaten it. There won't be any crises of overproduction anymore. 1990s, you had the fall of the Soviet Union. You had China opening up to foreign investment. And they said, oh, we've beaten it. There won't be opposition to capitalism, and it's going to be permanent growth. Capitalism can't create permanent growth because it's irrational. In order to have growth that is sustainable and long-term, that doesn't lead to a crisis of overproduction, in order to have that level of growth, you have to control the economy. The economy must be controlled by society. And At the end of the day, I mean, I don't know what all these people protesting out there think. There's a lot of people that call themselves leftists that are horrified by that, right? Oh my God, that's authoritarianism. You want the government to control the economy. Oh my God, I'm a leftist because I want to do my own thing and I want to tell my parents that they can't boss me around. And no, that's not what Marxism is about. Marxism is about the means of production being planned by society and production being controlled rationally, abolishing the crises of overproduction, and creating unlimited growth. That's what it's about. It's about getting rid of the crises of overproduction, rationally planning the economy to serve public good and not profits. It's not about, you giving the middle finger to your parents. It's not about, telling the rich that they need to share. It's not about humanitarian and moral concerns. I mean, that's part of it, right? I mean, the capitalist system obviously has a lot of moral problems, but at the end of the day, scientific socialism is about the need for society to be rationally organized. It's not about jealousy. It's about rationally overcoming the problems of the capitalist system.